How much do you need to retire? It's a question you must know if you want to plan effectively for your retirement. But also, it's a question that a lot of people just aren't too sure how to answer. But don't worry, because in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what you might need to retire, as well as how you can work it out yourself and what factors you'll need to consider when it comes to working out this number for yourself. My name's Ross Kelly, and as of last week, I'm now a level 4 diploma holder in regulated financial planning. Now all I need to do is actually become a financial planner, but should be easier to get a job now, at least you would hope. On this channel, we look at many areas of finance. We look at investing, we look at budgeting, we look at retirement planning, and maybe just what's in the news. So if any of that sounds good, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. Really helps the channel out, and it'll let you know when new videos come up. And with that, let's jump right into the video. So how much do you need to retire? First off, you've got to think, what does enough actually mean? It just comes down to three things: your outgoings, your income, and then your savings as well. More or less everything in personal finance just comes down to balancing your income and your outgoings and being able to make sure that those two are in balance to the point where you can live the lifestyle you want to. Where it gets difficult in retirement is that normally your income, it drops right down as you're no longer working, and as such your income, it drops. And yes, whilst it's normal that your outgoings are normally lower at that stage of life, you might have your mortgage paid off, less kids to fund, but ultimately normally the income drop is a good bit higher than the outgoing drop. You might have a couple things in your retirement that'll help kind of mitigate that income drop. Most common one's going to be the state pension. Assuming you've been making your national insurance contributions, you'll be entitled to access that, which will give you a level of guaranteed income. There's also the chance that if you've been working in the public sector and stuff like teaching or NHS work, you'll also have access to a defined benefits pension. This type of pension will also give you a level of secure income for the rest of your life, but it's not as common. So it's still worthwhile going over how much that most people will need for their retirement. And not to mention the state pension, you can only access once you hit 66 at the moment. And come 2028, it's going to be 67. And by the time I'm retiring, who knows what age I might be at, if the state pension's still even around. And that's where the third factor that was mentioned comes in: savings. If you've been diligent through your working life and putting away every month, these savings will hopefully make up the difference in your income to help you live the level of retirement that you want to find yourself in. Now, of course, there are many tools for this type of saving. You've got just your basic savings accounts, as well as your more tax efficient ones, like ISAs and pensions. But all of these tools will be covered in various videos in this channel, so be sure to stick around if you want to hear more info about them. Another important thing you might want to consider before we get to working out how much you might need in retirement is that for each individual person, it's likely going to be a completely different number. There's no cookie cutter amount that's going to be adequate for everyone. Every person has their different circumstances and different levels that they wish to live to, and as a result, there's no hard and fast number that can just apply to everyone. There's also a number of variables that can impact exactly how much you need for retirement. This list is basically endless. The amount of factors that can go into this type of decision, it's more or less uncountable. You've got as simple a question as, when do you want to retire? Do you want to retire before your state pension age, at your state pension age, or maybe after? There's other factors like your investment performance in your savings, as well as other economic factors like inflation, other more personal factors that might be impacting how much you need, whether that's how many dependents you've got, whether you've still got a mortgage to pay off. Not to mention, there might be legislative factors that impact your retirement as well. This could be things to changes to tax allowances, tax rates, changes to ISA allowances, pension allowances, or changes to the state pension, maybe even the removal of the state pension. The list is exhaustive, and the further away your retirement is, the more unpredictable these factors are going to be on your retirement. If you've got 40 years to wait, it's going to be a lot harder to predict what these factors might entail for you versus someone who might be retiring in 5 years. As such, when we're working out this number, we can only really do it in today's terms, as we have no clue what's going to be happening 40 years from now. Now moving on to how much you might need to actually save for your retirement, a common phrase you might hear thrown about when it comes to this sort of thing is your withdrawal rate. This is basically just the rate that you're accessing your savings. It can be done into any type of time frame, but normally, best practice, you do it for each year. For example, let's say you have £100,000 worth of savings that you want to use to now supplement your life. If you wanted to take £5,000 out of it every single year to help with that, that means you'd be having a withdrawal rate of 5% per year. And at that rate, that would last you 20 years before you use up all the savings, assuming there's no growth or anything like that. And obviously, if you were to increase that and you wanted, say, like 10k a year, then that means the withdrawal rate would be up to 10% per year. And that means the savings would only last you 10 years before it all ran out. Now, you might have heard me mention there that that was assuming that the savings have no growth. Obviously, normally when you invest and when you put your savings away, you're doing it while investing it, so that your value of money isn't eroding over time by stuff like inflation. The level at which these savings grow, we call that, well, aptly enough, the growth rate. And balancing the withdrawal rate and the growth rate is the key to a sustainable retirement. Now, in retirement, you're going to have three scenarios when it comes to trying to balance your growth rate and your withdrawal rate. Scenario one, the least ideal, where your growth rate is lower than your withdrawal rate. This means that while it's slowed down how long your savings will last, ultimately there is a clock on it. and it will run out eventually, and you'll be left with nothing in your savings to help supplement your retirement. Scenario 2, which is more ideal than the previous, but still not perfect, is that your growth rate and withdrawal rate are the same. This obviously isn't terrible, as it means that your savings are at a sustainable rate and they're being withdrawn to the point where you're not going to run out of money. But that's only assuming that there's no upsets, no family emergencies, no emergency bills that need to be covered, at which point it might just knock off that balance and then you'll find yourself in scenario 1. And then scenario 3, your best case scenario, where your growth rate is higher than your withdrawal rate. That means that over the long term, your savings are actually growing while you're accessing money. And this will allow you to do things like one-off payments, fixing up the kitchen, or even to eventually increase the withdrawal rate that you're taking out, and it'll allow you to live to a higher level of living. So after hearing that, you might be thinking, what is the most ideal withdrawal rate then? And for this type of thing, there is a rule of thumb that 4% is the ideal withdrawal rate for a sustainable retirement. The reason it's 4% is because the average stock market return over the past 100 years after controlling for inflation is about 7%. So using that 7% as a substitute for your growth rate, that gives you a bit of a buffer rate between your withdrawal rate. And that would mean you could withdraw from your savings sustainably throughout retirement without the worry of running out of money. Now, obviously, this is just a rule of thumb. That might not be appropriate for everyone. If you're a lower risk investor and you're not comfortable being exposed to, all the type of equities in the market and you're much more of a fixed interest investor, you might need to have a lower withdrawal rate as them types of returns that aren't going to be as high. And conversely, if you're a much more aggressive investor, you might be able to have a higher level of withdrawal rate as you'll be expecting a higher level of return. But yeah, that's why it's a rule of thumb. It's not really tailored to any individual person, but if you're just doing some general planning around this type of thing, it's a good number to use. Now that we've got the withdrawal rate of 4%, it's really quite straightforward to work out how much money you would need for your retirement. All you need to do is take the level of income that you wish to withdraw in retirement and times that by 4%. Or you could just times it by 25 and get the same number. For example, if you wanted £20,000 a year to live in your retirement each year, you would just need to take that £20,000 a year and times it by 25, which will give you 500,000. So that's the amount you would need to sustainably withdraw 20k in your retirement. Now, you might be hearing £20,000 a year in this current climate isn't exactly luxurious living. And you've now just heard that you're going to need to save £500,000 to be able to do that in retirement. And ultimately, yes, that is the scenario. And it's why a lot of people get caught with their pants down coming up to retirement, not realizing that they've not saved enough. But thankfully, there are a couple things that you need to bear in mind that could maybe help supplement that. For example, like mentioned earlier, most people have access to their state pension, assuming they've been making their national insurance contributions throughout their life. So going back to that previous example where you're wanting £20,000 a year, you can basically take off the state pension that you'll be receiving as well, because that will go towards how much money you need. So at the moment, if you've got full entitlement to the state pension, that'll get you about £12,000. And as a result, you could take off that £12,000 from the £20,000 a year that you're wanting. This means that to get that, you would only need to be withdrawing £8,000 a year from your savings in retirement to get the £20,000 a year. So now you just multiply that 8,000 by 25, and now the amount that you need saved is just 200,000. Well, I say just 200,000, but it's quite an improvement from 500k, I'd say. And on that note, if that's made you feel a good bit better, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out a lot, and it'll help me keep bringing videos that'll help you achieve your financial goals just that bit quicker. Now, to poop on your parade a wee bit, there's also some factors that need to be borne in mind that will bring the amount that you need to save up a bit. One of them, for example, is everyone's favourite topic, tax. We're assuming that none of the income that you're being taken out at the moment is being taxed, which likely isn't true. So for best practice, it's best to assume that that full £8,000 is going to be taxed at the basic rate, which is 20%. So all we need to do is gross that up, and that now brings us up to £10,000 a year. And the reason we're grossing it up like that is because if you're wanting to access the £8,000, obviously you'll need to take out 10k, and then after tax you'll be left with the £8,000. And now taking the new £10,000 a year figure and timesing that by 25, you now see that we need £250,000 saved. Now, if you've been saving efficiently and watching the videos on this channel so you know how to do that, then you won't be paying the full tax on all the savings. If you've been saving into things like ISAs and pensions, it's very unlikely that you'll be paying that much tax on your savings. But personally, for stuff like budgeting, I like to always assume the worst case scenario, just in case some weird change to legislation comes in that makes it so that it won't be as tax efficient. It means that you still have the headroom to be able to live in the retirement that you planned for yourself. On that, be sure to drop a wee comment down below and let me know, do you think the government's going to change anything when it comes to these allowances like ISAs and pensions? Do you think they'll make it less tax efficient, more tax efficient, to maybe encourage some more people to save? And also, how much do you plan on saving for retirement as a result? Are you taking these things into account, or are you just letting it ride? And the last thing I'll bring up in regards to how much you might want to save for retirement is that all these examples we've been speaking in today's terms, which I will say, for the most part, when it comes to budgeting and stuff like that, it is the right thing to do. It can be hard for the human brain to conceptualize stuff moving forward in time, so when doing these types of things, it's always worthwhile doing it in today's terms. But while it is easier, it doesn't take away from the fact that inflation is a real thing, for better or worse. Whether we bear that in mind for them examples or not, it will still have an impact in the real world. What you can buy today with £20,000 simply won't be the same 40 years from now. As a result, we'll say that it's me that's wanting to access that 250k in retirement, and I'll say that I'll retire at the state pension age at 67, likely will be higher when I actually come to retire, but in this case, I'll say it's 42 years from now. Now, when picking an inflation target, it's normally good practice to go off of like the central bank's targets, which are 2% per year. But again, I like to, when it comes to budgeting, predict for the worst case scenario. And as a result, we'll just do 2.5%. So if we take the 250,000 and we times it by an inflation rate of 2.5% over the course of 42 years, that figure's actually going to need to be £705,000. Ouch, I better cut back in the old Uber Eats, I think. Now, before you start panicking and think there's no point, that's way too much to try and save, you might as well just go throw it all on red and hope that you get lucky. But do bear in mind, that 7% I mentioned earlier, that's bearing in mind inflation. So if you've got your stuff invested, it's likely that inflation won't have that much of an impact when it comes to your retirement. Now, hearing these types of numbers, it can be quite scary. The current climate, more people are living paycheck to paycheck, and real wage growth hasn't seen any movement in the past couple decades at least. That in combination with the cost of living crisis, trying to find any money to put away each month can feel like an impossible endeavour. Throw in a situation where you might have kids or dependents that you need to look after as well, it really does feel like the world can be against you sometimes. I mean, I don't have any kids or anything like that, and I'm still feeling the squeeze trying to put money away as much as I can every month. But it's important to not lose hope with these types of things. Not to sound too cheesy, but you only lose if you give up with this type of thing. As long as you try your hardest and put it away, no matter how little it is each month, it will pay off moving forward. Forming the habits of saving is the hardest bit. And once you've got that bit down, the rest will come in time. And if you're too worried about it and you think you can't do it, know that I do believe that you are capable of it. All right, admittedly, that might be a wee bit cheesy, but yeah, no, we can all do it. Believe me, we're all in the boat together and we can manage. And again, bear in mind, in them previous examples, we're assuming that it's getting taxed fully when you're taking the money out. If you're smart with your money, you can really bring down them figures. Not to mention loads of other wee budgeting and saving stuff that you can do to really get them numbers down and make it a lot easier for yourself. I plan on making a more in-depth video when it comes to how to budget and save efficiently type of thing, even for people who think it's impossible to do so. So if that sounds of interest, be sure to stick around, give the channel a subscribe, and drop a comment. Let me know that you want to see that sooner rather than later, and I'll move it up in the docket. But yeah, that's the video. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for making it to the end. You know, still kind of riding the high of getting my qualifications, so that feels really good. Now I just, you know, need to actually get a job as a financial planner, which, knowing my luck, will probably end up being harder than the exams were. Thanks for the support so far. I've already gotten more views than I thought I would have by far at this point. So yeah, just gotta keep trucking along and hope you keep enjoying the content. When it comes to retirement, the two most common accounts you'll hear about are ISAs and pensions. And in my most recent video, I'll look at both of them and compare the two between each other and find out which one might be better for your goals. So be sure to go check that out right here. And again, thanks for watching.